Have you ever wondered what it would take for a person to simply step out of a taxi and into thin air, vanishing completely from the face of the earth? What if that person was not just anyone, but a powerful, well-connected Supreme Court judge in the heart of New York City? This is the story of Joseph Forcecrator, a man who became so famous for disappearing that his own name became a verb for vanishing without a trace. Our story begins in the sweltering heat of New York City, August 1930. The Jazz Age was fading, and the shadow of the Great Depression loomed large. Judge Joseph Forcecrator, at 41 years old, was a man at the peak of his power. Dapper, charismatic, and a prominent figure in the city's corrupt Tammany Hall political machine, he was a man who knew everyone and was seen everywhere. On the evening of August 6th, Judge Crater enjoyed a fine dinner with his lawyer friend, William Klein, and a showgirl acquaintance named Sally Lou Ritz at Billy Haas's Chop House on West 45th Street. It was a perfectly normal evening in the bustling theater district. After the meal, the judge said his goodbyes, stepped outside onto the street, hailed a taxi, and waved from the window as it pulled away into the river of city traffic. He was never seen again. The disappearance itself was the final act in a day filled with strange and inexplicable behavior. That very morning, Judge Crater had visited his bank and cashed 2 large checks, totaling over $5,000, a massive sum for the time. He stuffed the bundles of cash into his pockets, leaving behind a trail of financial questions. Why did a man of his stature need such a large amount of cash on hand? Later that day, he had his law clerk accompany him to his courthouse chambers. Once there, the judge spent over 2 hours in a flurry of activity. He destroyed numerous documents, pulling them from his files and burning them in his wastebasket. He then packed 2 large briefcases with other papers, telling his clerk he was taking them home. It was the behavior of a man either preparing for a long trip or trying to erase his past. The initial moments after his disappearance were marked by a bizarre and confounding silence. His wife, Stella Crater, was on vacation at their summer home in Maine. She expected him to join her, but when he didn't arrive, she wasn't immediately alarmed, assuming his important work had detained him. She waited for a letter or a phone call that never came. In New York, his colleagues and courthouse staff noticed his absence, but no one sounded the alarm. They assumed he had simply gone on an impromptu holiday, perhaps with one of the many showgirls he was known to associate with. For 10 long days, the city moved on, completely unaware that one of its most prominent legal figures had vanished from its very streets. The alarm was finally and quietly raised on August 16th when his law clerk, growing increasingly concerned, alerted Crater's fellow judges. His wife, Stella, didn't make a formal missing person report to the police until September 3rd, nearly a month after he was last seen. This critical delay meant that any trail the judge might have left behind was now hopelessly cold. The investigation, once it began, exploded into a national sensation. The disappearance of a New York Supreme Court judge was front-page news across the country. The New York Police Department launched one of the largest and most highly publicized manhunts in its history. Judge Crater's face was plastered on newspapers and telegraph wires, earning him the nickname, the missingest man in New York. Investigators immediately delved into the judge's complicated personal life. He had a reputation as a man about town, a frequent patron of Broadway shows and speakeasies. His name was linked to a string of chorus girls and aspiring actresses. The most obvious theory was that he had simply run off with a mistress to start a new life, abandoning his career and his wife. The police tracked down Sally Lou Ritz, his dinner companion, and numerous other women he was known to have been involved with. They were all questioned, their lives scrutinized, but none had any information. None had seen him since that night. The theory of a romantic elopement quickly began to fall apart. There was no one to elope with. The next logical avenue of investigation was the city's dark and corrupt political underbelly. Judge Crater was a product of Tammany Hall, the powerful and notoriously corrupt Democratic Party political machine that controlled New York City. At the time of his disappearance, a major investigation, led by Special Prosecutor Thomas Dewey, was just beginning to expose the widespread bribery and racketeering that riddled the city's government and judiciary. This political connection opened up a far more sinister possibility. Was Judge Crater silenced? Did he know too much about the illegal dealings of his powerful friends and colleagues? Was he scheduled to be a witness in the upcoming investigations? His meticulous destruction of documents on the day he vanished certainly suggests he was trying to sever ties with a dangerous part of his life. For months, the investigation yielded nothing but dead ends and wild speculation. Then, in January 1931, 5 months after the judge had vanished, the case took a dramatic and bizarre turn. Stella Crater, finally returning to their Fifth Avenue apartment, made a startling discovery. Hidden in a secret drawer in their bedroom dresser, she found a series of sealed envelopes addressed to her. Inside these envelopes was a treasure trove of bewildering clues. There were thousands of dollars in cash, several checks made out to the judge, life insurance policies, and a single cryptic handwritten note. The note was a list of names and a chilling message that seemed to be a premonition of his own demise, indicating that he was in danger and that powerful people might want him dead. The note only deepened the mystery. It confirmed that the judge was in some kind of trouble, but it provided no clear answers. Was it a suicide note from a man who planned to take his own life? Or was it a final, desperate message from a man who knew he was about to be murdered? The police analyzed the handwriting and confirmed it was Crater's, but the note's true meaning remained an enigma. The disappearance and the corruption it hinted at led to the convening of a special grand jury in 1931. The jury heard testimony from hundreds of witnesses, from high-ranking politicians to Broadway showgirls. They delved into the city's dirty laundry, but regarding the judge's fate, they came to a frustrating conclusion. They officially declared that Judge Crater was deceased, but admitted they had no evidence to prove a crime had been committed. With the official investigation at a standstill, theories began to run wild. The mob theory gained significant traction. In the age of prohibition, organized crime was rampant. Did the judge have gambling debts he couldn't pay? Did he get involved with the wrong people or make a ruling that angered a powerful mob boss? In the violent world of 1930s New York, a mob hit was a very real and plausible explanation. Yet the theory that he engineered his own disappearance refused to die. The cashed checks, the destroyed papers, the packed briefcases, it all could be seen as the work of a man meticulously planning his escape. Perhaps the pressures of his life, his unhappy marriage, and the looming corruption scandal became too much, and he simply decided to walk away from it all and start over under a new identity. As the years turned into decades, the case of Judge Crater grew colder and colder, transforming from an active police investigation into a piece of New York City folklore. Sightings were reported from all over the world for years, but none were ever confirmed. The man in the taxi had truly vanished, leaving behind only questions and a legend. In the late 1930s, a notorious gangster and member of the infamous hit squad Murder, Inc., Abe Relez, claimed to have knowledge of the Crater case. He alleged that the judge had been murdered by other mobsters and buried in Brooklyn. However, Relez was a known informant who often fabricated stories to gain favor with the authorities, and his claims were never substantiated with any proof. The case file gathered dust, becoming one of the NYPD's most iconic and frustrating cold cases. It seemed destined to remain unsolved, A perfect crime or a perfect disappearance, a story told and retold but never concluded. The mystery was so complete. It was as if Judge Crater had achieved a strange form of immortality through his own vanishing act. For over 70 years, there was nothing. The trail was not just cold, it was frozen in time. The world moved on, New York City transformed, and the mystery of Judge Joseph Force Crater became a historical curiosity, a footnote in the city's colorful and corrupt past. It seemed the truth had been buried forever. The breakthrough, when it finally came, was as shocking as it was unexpected. In 2005, a woman named Stella Ferruccigood passed away. In her effects, her family discovered a handwritten letter containing what she claimed was a deathbed confession from her late husband. This letter, written years earlier, purported to finally solve the 75-year-old mystery of Judge Crater. The letter told a chilling and specific story. It claimed that on the night of August 6, 1930, Judge Crater was murdered by a group of men, including a New York City police officer and his taxi driver brother. The letter alleged that these men were working on behalf of the mob, possibly under the direction of Charles Lucky, Luciano's enforcers, to silence the judge. The most stunning detail in the letter was the location of the judge's final resting place. The letter claimed that after he was murdered, his body was taken to Coney Island in Brooklyn and buried in an unmarked grave. The burial site, it said, was beneath the boardwalk, on the very spot where the New York Aquarium was later built. The police, upon receiving this new information, cautiously reopened the case. The details in the letter were specific and plausible. However, the confession was secondhand, and all the individuals named in it were long dead. Furthermore, the site of the supposed burial had been extensively excavated and developed decades ago, when the aquarium was built. There was no way to confirm the story or recover a body. The breakthrough had led to yet another dead end. In the immediate aftermath of his 1930 disappearance, the lack of a body meant there was no murder trial, no verdict, and no justice. There was only a profound and public void. The official outcome was the 1931 grand jury's declaration that he was dead, a legal conclusion that provided no factual answers. For his wife, Stella Crater, the disappearance was a life sentence of uncertainty. She spent decades searching for answers, writing a book about the mystery, and relentlessly pursuing any lead she could find. She never remarried and dedicated her life to preserving the memory of her husband's case. She finally had him declared legally dead in 1939, simply to settle his estate. The political fallout from the Crater case was immense. His disappearance and the shadowy connections it exposed added significant fuel to the Seabury Commission's investigation into Tammany Hall. The scandal ultimately led to the resignation of New York's charismatic but corrupt mayor, Jimmy Walker, and marked the beginning of the end for Tammany Hall's iron grip on the city. While the 2005 letter provided a compelling narrative, it could not be proven. It offered a potential solution, but no concrete evidence. The case officially remains open to this day, a testament to the fact that even a detailed confession is not enough to close a case when the physical proof has been lost to time. The legacy of Judge Joseph Force Crater is not one of jurisprudence, but of mystery. His greatest contribution to American culture was his own disappearance. The phrase "to pull a crater" entered the American lexicon as shorthand for vanishing completely, cementing his place in the annals of unsolved crimes. He remains a ghost of a bygone era, a symbol of the glamour, danger, and deep-seated corruption of 1930s New York City. His story is a perfect storm of true crime elements: a powerful victim, political intrigue, mob connections, a beautiful showgirl, a cryptic note, and the ultimate missing piece: a body. The case serves as a masterclass in how a person can be utterly erased, even in a bustling, modern metropolis. It highlights the challenges of a cold case, where the passage of time becomes the greatest obstacle to the truth, obscuring facts and silencing witnesses until only legends remain. The unconfirmed deathbed confession gives us a story that feels like the truth, an ending that fits the violent context of the era. It paints a picture of a man who flew too close to the sun, got caught between powerful forces, and paid the ultimate price, his body buried beneath the foundations of a future landmark. So we are left with that final, haunting image, a well-dressed man in a fedora, waving from the back of a taxi as it disappears into the hot August night. Was he on his way to a secret new life, or was he on his way to an unmarked grave in Coney Island? After more than 90 years of searching, speculating, and a bombshell confession from the grave, the city continues to hold its secrets close. The definitive truth of what happened to Judge Joseph Force Crater, the missingest man in New York, may forever be lost to the streets from which he vanished.